Well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Today, I am joined by a friend, a colleague, a co-host, a mentor who is filled with a wealth of wisdom and somebody who means a lot to me personally and professionally. Dr. Roger Landry is a preventive medicine physician trained at Tufts University School of Medicine and Harvard University School of Public Health. Dr. Landry specializes in building environments that empower older adults to maximize their unique potential. Now, for more than 2 decades, Dr. Landry has focused his efforts on older adults as a lecturer, a researcher, and a consultant. He is also, as I mentioned, podcast producer and host of The Bright Side of Longevity, and the author of award-winning book Live Long, Die Short, A Guide to Authentic Health and Successful Aging. His newest book is Living in Overtime. Dr. Roger, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Danielle, I'm only half those things because of my association with you. You make me look good all the time. So thank you. And you got the voice of an angel, so it sounds even better. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. It's so weird now to ask you this first question because we've been doing the podcast now for, I want to say 4 or 5 years, over 150 something episodes. So this time you get to be in the hot seat.
All right. I was born in central Massachusetts, went to college there, went to medical school in Boston, did an internship at Maine Medical Center, and Southeast Asia was going on. So I actually joined the Air Force and got sent to Southeast Asia for 2 years and loved it, and ended up staying in the military for 23 years, traveled all over the world, had a number of magnificent assignments. And my basic job was to take care of people in high risk environments, make sure that they were safe and performed at their best. So it was preventive medicine. So when I was done with the military, I said, okay, where am I going to practice this preventive medicine? And I went to northeastern Pennsylvania for a little while with a healthcare system. And, that wasn't, they weren't convinced enough about prevention being important to them. So at that time, my brother, who was with the MacArthur Foundation, gave me a call and said, look, well, they just finished a 10-year-long study on aging. And they have found that successful aging is mostly due to lifestyle, and that's prevention. Why don't we go together and make this become a reality? We formed a business called Masterpiece Living. And for over 2 decades, we partnered with senior living communities to make sure that they were places where people were going to have a healthy longevity, age in a better way.
Yeah, and I've had the honor of working with you, I want to say since 2010 with Masterpiece, and now through the bright side of longevity. And we can tell that all of that messaging, all of that positivity on how to live a good life, not only present in your book, Live Long, Die Short, but in this newest book, Living in Overtime. It's fiction, but there's a lot of key elements to aging well. But first things first, I'd like to know what inspired you to write Living in Overtime, and can you give us a little snapshot about what the book's about?
I was always intrigued by fiction and experimented with short stories for a while, but my professional life took over when I wrote the book "Live Long, Die Short," and I was out there on traveling and talking about it and giving presentations, and then COVID hit, and I was down in my basement, and I got out a novel that I had started called Living in Overtime. It was maybe a fifth done or something, and put my head down and finished it during COVID. It was a magnificent way to spend a very difficult time. But the concept really came from the fact that uh, that well, I love fiction, first of all, and I wanted to do some of that and explore my writing even further. But the actual topic, well, that was something that as a man who was aging and being in a world that was disruptive and changing, I said, I think I want to try have this guy, Sam, as it turns out, walk through a world where things happen that are a little unusual.
A little unusual.
Yes.
So when people pick up this book, it's what's unusual about it. Like give us the premise. I know the premise because I read the book. I got an advance copy. I feel very special. But tell readers what's the gist of it.
I gave it to you because you're such a fine writer, and I wanted your opinion, and I thank you for that. Well, the premise is that there's an older gentleman who's just enduring life. He's had a kind of a tough life, particularly with relationships, and he's just tolerating life, enduring life, and not really living life. And he meets a younger woman who is somewhat in the same boat, but more she's more denying life or not facing things that are in her life and just sort of running around and flitting around from on the surface. And they meet, and there's an instant connection there, an intellectual connection, and they like each other. That as people, you know, they're about what 25 years apart, older. He's 25 years older, and they meet on an airplane, and he steps out of character and proposes something that's pretty unorthodox, but it leads to them becoming more aware of their lives and healing a lot of trauma and being able to start a new life. They're only together for a short time. That's the overtime time on it, and then they go out into the world, better people living a better life.
And and we'll get into some of the themes as we talk, but it's interesting when you think of like age gap stories, you might have the misconception that it's going to be some one of uh Clint Eastwood's.
Midlife crisis
You
type
know,
something.
here's Clint Eastwood with like a woman 50 years younger and he's still as viral as he was, or viral, not viral. Well, he might be,
And
but
viral too, maybe. Yeah.
right, the time of COVID, viral as he was, 30 years ago. But it's not like that. It's about how two different generations and two different perspectives can learn and grow together. So I think the dialogue is quite interesting between them.
The dialogue, to me, was everything. And I wanted these people to connect on an intellectual level first,
Mhm.
and they did. And of course, they got closer during the year that they're together, and so it became an emotional level, and a real authentic connection. And but I wanted them to be able to uh, draw out those things that neither one of them was talking about in their individual lives and draw it out so that they both talked about it. They both put it in there and faced it. Despite it was a difficult thing for both of them, but they supported each other through this process of growing and going into the next chapter of their lives.
Yeah, despite some judgment from other people, such as her sister or different people trying to get in the way. So it was kind of like a judgment-free zone to have those conversations, which was nice.
Of course, the Selena's friend is saying, "What? What are you talking about? What are you're going to go to Woods Hole, Massachusetts, with some guy who's 25 old older than you?" And of course, his family is saying, "What?
Yeah.
Is this a late life crisis for you?" Anyway,
So how much do you relate to Sam? And do the characters in your book, are they complete fiction or are these real people you know in your life? Because some of the stories with these people, they seemed like real people to me.
yeah. Well, as you know, when you write fiction and you have characters, they are real people to you, and in fact, it's difficult to give them up when it's all over with. So of course, I identify with Sam on the level of being an older man. I'm certainly not where he was. I've been happily married 55 years. Uh, uh,
I
and
saved.
he was divorced and in a very tough place. And it was relationships mostly where he struggled, but also professionally. But I did identify with him as an older man navigating through the world as it is today, and one who could quite easily just sort of draw the covers over him metaphorically, which is what he was doing. He was living his life, and he was a writer and teaching about writing, but it really wasn't living. And so we all, I think, have a part of our lives that perhaps we don't fully nourish, and we don't follow the dream, so to speak, that we may have. And for him, it was writing fiction, actually, as it turns out, and also getting back into the world where he wasn't so down on a whole gender, namely
Mm.
women. And he was with her, with Selena's support. He was able to face those demons and work through them.
Yeah.
So I did. Now the characters, I learned very quickly, early in my writing, many years ago, that you may come across very interesting people, but if you paint them just as they are, that's very constricting. uh, you know, oh, he's a great character, but I know him. He would never do that. And it's
Right.
better to have the possibilities there abound. So they are composites. They're composites of people I have met, I do know, and so I feel familiar with them, but there's no one who is exactly like each of these characters.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Nice save for anybody listening. If
Right.
you read it sounds like you, it's not you. So, how did you get into the head of Selena? Was it difficult to write from the perspective of a woman?
Absolutely was. And you know my history, but my history is that for maybe the first 3 decades of my life, I was totally in a male world. I mean, of course, I had a mother, no sisters, and eventually I had got married and I had a daughter, but still my world was male. All my education was all male, and the military was mostly all male. And so when I came out and went into healthcare, boom, I was suddenly in an environment that was foreign. And I realized that this wasn't a major impairment for me. And so I took I put energy in, and took special focus. And I said, I have to do better in understanding. And my wife certainly helped, but that's one person. And my daughter helped, but that's one person. And so in healthcare, you work with lots of women. And then Masterpiece, where I worked with you and still do, there were women of all ages that we were working with, and that was a wonderful education for me. So it was difficult, but I think I was able to overcome my limited experience, early limited experience, and get into her head. I appreciate you saying, "How did you get in?" Meaning, I did get into her head, and
For sure, for sure. So, we touched on some of the themes in the book. Could we revisit that a little bit more? So, what are you hoping that readers will take away?
well, I think first and foremost, I think that the book is meant to drive home that we absolutely need authentic, authentic connection with others, relationship. We are social beings, and we may get beaten up, and we may be defensive, and we may have lots of regrets and things, and bad things happen, and people are annoying, but we need each other. That is absolutely the case. The second theme is one where I'm trying to drive home that we have to be present for our lives. We can't go through lives with an unexamined life, and sort of racing to the finish line, because right now that's the way most of us live. A frenetic pace, never really, if for want of a cliche, stopping to smell the roses, stopping and seeing the roses, experiencing the roses,
Yes.
smelling the roses. That doing that with our lives and being present, absolutely important. I think the next thing is that we should be open to possibilities in our life that we may not think of. This was something that Sam never thought about, and in a split second on an airplane, he went with a whim. He took a leap of hope and faith, and so did Selena after she thought about it for quite a while, and so sometimes we have to take a leap of faith, you know. And those are probably the three main things that are in the book.
Yeah, and I'd like to add the one that I mentioned too about intergenerational connections and learning from each other because they learned from it wasn't just one-sided. It was because that I had I had a critical eye for, is he going to come across as I'm going to take care of you and tell you what to do? And you'll be fine as long, because it wasn't like that. It was a very equitable relationship. And that's what I most appreciated. Nobody assumed I am older, wiser, or I am younger, faster. It was just an equal collaboration, which I thought was very nice.
Mission accomplished. Thank you for saying it. That was the goal. Selena's was a very powerful character and wasn't about to be told. And she's really a resilient person. We find out that she's been through a whole lot and is still pretty positive, although not really delving down and dealing with some of the trauma and those things in her past that are limiting her future. So yes, in intergenerational, in our work with the older adults and in senior living, that is an absolutely critical component of the social connection. It shouldn't be just limited to one peer group. As hunter gatherers over the eons we've been together, we were always intergenerational groups, hunter gatherer groups, and that's the way it should be. Although in our society today, we kind of marginalize older adults and they're off to the side, and young people learn to think that what good are older adults, except for your grandparents maybe, but what good are they? I mean, they don't know technology as well, and that's becoming an error in judgment. But the fact is they're survivors, they're resilient, they have a lot to teach, and yet they have a lot to learn from younger people also.
Yeah, so some great themes. Be present and mindful, foster the social connections and age connections from different generations, older and younger, and also to maybe take those leaps of faith and consider, saying yes to more things that you would normally say no to with caution. I mean, Sam could have been an axe murderer. We're glad he's not. You created a good guy. So, but taking some of those, how would you describe it? Calculated risks.
Exactly. Well, even maybe what we would previously consider calculated would uncalculated take that risk to a point. I mean, you know you don't want to be totally out of character, but I think stepping out of character and following something that perhaps you absolutely never thought of, and eh, give it a try.
Yeah,
If we're growing, if you're going to grow, we have to try new things.
yeah,
And since
yeah.
the world is always changing, nothing remains the same. We might as well roll with that and change ourselves.
Yeah, and you and I talk about it a lot on the bright side when I'm coaching somebody, and the taking that risk is really scary. So I'll be like, well, what's a tiny risk? Okay, if this gives you gripping social anxiety to go to this party, well, what would it be to meet somebody for coffee for 5 minutes? Like, how can you break it down into like a small, you're not going to die if it falls apart spectacularly, great, you grow from it. But the best case is, you know, better connection. That's just one example, but taking those small risks.
I travel a lot, as you know, and people to people, even when language is a barrier, so to speak, they connect, and I think the world would be a whole lot more peaceful place if just people were able to deal with people rather than leaders sort of call
Yes.
shots.
Yeah.
But I think we're all from same DNA. And sometime way back, we started with a certain DNA, whatever that was, whatever you believe, but that's where we're all from. And so we're all connected in very substantive ways, and our needs are very similar, at least at the core.
Wasn't it you who said you've got sunflowers behind you that we're like 60 something percent flower at one point? I don't
Yeah,
remember the percentage.
daffodils, 15% of our DNAs of daffodil trees are about 40, fruit trees a little higher at 60, mammals are about 80 to 85, and then there's the primates, the big apes. I won't say how much we share with them. It would scare people.
Okay. But it's nice to know that when I hug a tree, I'm hugging, it's a way I'm giving care to myself because we relate to apparently the DNA of a tree.
Absolutely. Our relationship with nature has been all kind of, this is part of the other part of me, the live long, die short part. It's been, it's been ripped out of what it really was for most of the time that we humans have been on Earth. And We got to get it back. I talk about forest bathing and just being out in nature.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a visit. That should be going home.
Yeah. And you just provided the perfect segue. We want to touch on Live Long, Die Short. It's been a highly successful, multi-award winning book. Can you tell us a little bit about Live Long, Die Short? And maybe we could touch on some of the themes because they're similar for both books.
They are indeed. Well, this was a book that came after we had been in our business working with older adults to help them age in a better way for over 10 years. And what we did was based upon the results of the MacArthur Foundation study on aging, which is about 10 years long and it ended in the mid 90s. And a book came from that called Successful Aging. The author of that was part of our founding fathers of our company, and he himself said, "I think it's time for us to update." And I said he was pretty old at the time, and he said, "I can't do it." And he was willing to write a foreword to my book and to tie the two together. And so it was built on that, but it was built upon our experience and what we see when people are given the opportunity to really focus on their lifestyle. And this is a holistic lifestyle. You, of all people, know that's really critical. So it's the physical and the intellectual, the social and the spiritual, having to do with meaning and purpose in your life. And when you focus on those things and are given the opportunity to do that and to develop all of those areas, we thrive. And the data shows that people live they stay at higher levels of performance longer and longer time. And so that was from that in the book. I have 10 tips. You should really give someone meat to take
Mhm.
away. And those 10 tips were aimed at people examining, not having an unexamined life, but examining the aspects of their lifestyle so that they could, and then with some help with some books and videos and working with the people at their communities, were able to grow in those areas and thrive. And we followed them through, and indeed they do. They very much did have healthier longevity.
Okay, so this might be a repeat question because you touched on a lot of the tips. If you want someone to take maybe two or three tips for older adults and people of all ages to live a better life, are they the same tips that are in Living in Overtime that you would
As it
give to?
turns out, yes, it wasn't a willful thing, but I can't think of something professionally that's really important for healthy longevity and then write a book about people struggling with their lives
Yeah,
and not have the two mesh. So there's three there. So it is about being socially connected,
yeah,
very important.
yeah,
It is about wherever you are, be there, be present,
mm, yeah.
and it's about also meaning and purpose in your life, and that's really also has to do with being spiritual, examining your life, being present. But we all need purpose, and that changes during the course of our lifespan. And it's a question of whether you're going to uh, be there and really be in charge of developing what your purpose is so that you get out of bed in the morning rather than just have it happen to you or believe the myth that aging is only about decline. And so what purpose can you have? Wrongo, not true. We all know we have examples of older adults who start new things later in life and thrive. And it's all around us. And we're seeing it more and more. And we certainly saw it in our work together, Danielle.
So you mean, say, from going and being a preventive medicine physician and a flight surgeon to an award-winning author. That's quite a shift. You've done a lot of things in the short time you've been here, Roger.
None of them were planned, Danielle. That's the other thing. I sometimes I have young people come to me and say, "I'm not sure what I want to be," or I'm not sure what major to take in college. And I tell them basically, it really doesn't matter. What really matters is that you're open to possibilities in your life,
Yeah.
and you learn to deal with people. And if you can speak in public, that's great. but even if just private, you'll be able to relate to people. Uh, you can be a rock star if you do things like you don't have to be right all the time, or you forgive people, and those kind of connections, and the being open to possibilities. Once again, what we have in the book, that's how we thrive, and that takes you down the road you may not have thought was going to be your road, and mine was not. I was going to be a cardiologist, absolutely be a cardiologist. In the military, I just loved the prevention, and I loved working with people uh, who uh, who could otherwise get into deep trouble if we didn't pay
Yeah.
attention. And it's the same with older adults. That it was very same. Pilots, older adults, actually both kind of like high risk environments
Yeah.
relative to your health. So, uh, but again, never planned that, and certainly never planned. Although had pipe dreams about writing a book, but never really thought that was going to be part of my future. And it is, and it will continue to be.
And what's so interesting is I don't even think you intended living in overtime to be a companion manual to Live Long, Die Short. But here you have this nonfiction with 10 tips, and you give lots of like real world examples in the book. And now Living in Overtime, which is a fictional account, but it touches on all the themes like, here's how you can put this book in action if you use it the right way, and in some cases the wrong way, because people are not perfect in your book too. Things, there are hiccups.
Wow. Well, I guess my right brain was talking to my left brain at the time.
Maybe. And I have you to thank, come to think of it, why I learned how to podcast and do video production, why I became a coach, getting into audiobooks. This was all in work with Masterpiece, where you were like, Danielle, can you figure out how to do this? And you said you offered the opportunity. And I was like, I don't know, but I'll give it a try. And so thanks to you and that little gentle push, I've done a lot of things that I would not have otherwise done.
Let me say it from my perspective. You have flourished. I mean, you have come so far and done so much. This is a love fest with the two of us here. I really appreciate certainly what you've done for me, which is magnificent, helping me with my changes. But your personal development has just been sort of meteoric, and I so admire you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now, most important question, what's next for you? You've done so much. Where do we go from here?
Well, I'm sort of off the road. I spent a good part of my career on the road traveling, maybe half the time, and I love not doing that so much anymore. I still travel, but for pleasure. Just got back from Europe. And so what's for me, obviously writing has to be part of my future. I so felt it felt right. And although it's a struggle and takes a while and you have to be patient, but it helps you personally to grow, as you know so well, and and you surround yourself with these people who are from here, but there they are. They're part of your life, and you can almost say, well, what would Selena say in this case, or what would Sam say in this case? And
Yeah.
and sometimes that's the next chapter. So this happens, and what are they going to do? And you really don't know
Yeah.
sometimes,
I
but
know. Your character surprise you. Every once in a while, a character will take over, and I was like, wow, I didn't see that one coming. And I'm the author.
you're the creator, so I do want to continue to write. Certainly, I am absolutely 100% still dedicated to prevention. That's if you want another word for it, that's population health. So that's keeping the populations healthy. So if it's older adults, great. If it's the country, great. And so I will continue to probably write some things with that. Occasionally, I'm still giving talks. I'll probably write some I'll continue definitely articles and things on healthy longevity and getting the most out of your life.
And not to mention the Bright Side of Longevity podcast, which we are
I
still.
have this great co-host, and it's fantastic working with this lady, and we have fun, and we have a very eclectic range of guests that
Yeah.
that come. And the messaging isn't, all like very, very focused sometimes. Sometimes it's a very general approach. We just interviewed a gentleman who's got a terminal diagnosis, and what he's doing with his life as he's trying to beat it, and he is doing very well, but he knows,
Yeah.
well, I guess we all know that at some point we have an expiration date, so to speak. But he wasn't he something. He was so positive about things, and so
And so
uh,
purposeful.
yes,
Not
exactly.
taking anything for granted and purposeful and intentional about his life. And even now giving back because all the proceeds from the sale of his book are going towards cancer research and trials. So amazing gentleman. In fact, after this call, I'm going to be promoting that on social media. In fact, I'm going to put a link to our podcast in the description of this episode. I'm also going to put a link to make sure that people know where to go to get your books so they can buy them because they're available on Amazon, but they're also available in wherever you like to shop, your favorite bookstore. They can order it for you because it should be in their catalog. But where can people go, Roger, if they want you to present or they just want to reach out and talk about prevention?
One of two websites, the one that applies to us, which is brightsideoflongevity.com. That's one. And another one is we still have our masterpiece, which is mymasterpieceliving.com. Both of those, I would get the message, and if someone would like to hear me speak, we can talk details.
Okay, and I can see your tag in the description underneath your name, rlandry at brightsideoflongevity.com. So they're okay to email you there as well. Is that
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I'll get the message, and we'll talk because I'm still meeting new people.
Well, Dr. Roger, as I've said before, you're one of my favorite people. I learned so much from you. I love working with you. I appreciate your friendship and our work as colleagues. Thank you for taking the time to be here, and it means a lot to me.